Warning, this podcast will rocket you into the knowledge and wisdom intended to inspire, influence, and impact you to lead a Christian Rocketeers organization. Let's honor the sacrifice Christ the Son died to give you by leading the life and nonprofit God has called you to well. God is doing great and amazing things in the heavens and on earth. Let's tap into His wisdom and reach for the stars together.
Hey everyone, welcome to another special episode of the Christian Rocketeers podcast. And my guest today, again, welcome back, is my business partner, friend, and co-host, Carrie Reichertz. And today she is dressed in beautiful Kenyan attire. And Carrie, are we going to Kenya today?
I think we might be.
I think we are. So today we wanted to tell you the story of, we come to you from a standpoint of we've done this, we've been on this journey for a long time, and today we're going to tell you why. So today we're going to talk about a wonderful project that we love and adore, and that is Mercy's Light Family. So, Carrie, how did you get started traveling to Kenya?
Well, starting there, I went to Kenya the first time in 2008 with my church. And how did I get there? Well, I never really wanted to go to Kenya. I never really wanted to travel the world. I was hoping to get to the 50 states and probably not Alaska and Hawaii because they were just too far. And so that's kind of was my life travel goal. And from there, like I said, this opportunity came up in my church, and I was not a churchy person. A lot of this journey is outlined in I'm not going to be able to go into all of it, but my book, From Lawyer to Missionary. But I was not a churchy person. I grew up in church, but I felt like it was like something that you checked off your to-do list. And it pretty much told me that, you're going to hell. You're a horrible person. You'll never be good enough. So, just do as many good things as possible. And the day you die, there'll be these scales. And if you did more good things than bad, you'd go to heaven. If you did more bad things than good, you go to hell. And so that's what I heard. I'm not saying that's what they said, but that's what I heard. And so that was my idea of church. And it was like, well, that's not a place to run to for refuge. That's for sure. It was a place of really like, you're not good enough. And, all of these kind of things. And so I had a friend that forced me to go to church one time. She was in town. She was from out of town. She's like, oh, I really want to go to this church. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, and we fought all weekend, in quotes, and finally it was just like, Carrie, like, it's 1 hour, just go with her. And so we were late, but we went. We couldn't find it, but we went, and we got there, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, there are churches out here that actually like talk to me like about my real life. Like, is that possible? That this book can really apply to my real life, and that churches care about what's happening in my life and actually speak to that. And the music was amazing and all that. So anyway, through that, then I was going to that church, and the opportunity to go to Kenya came up. And when I first went to that church and that opportunity came up, I'm like, I'm going to be out of this church. They're going to do something that's going to annoy me, and I'm sure I'll be gone. They'll ask for money or whatever it is that I thought was going to like just rock the boat and be like, yeah, I'm out of here. I'll be gone in a few months. I'm sure as heck not going to church, around the world with these people. And so that was that. So I didn't go. Through that year, I ended up going into a Bible study, not starting a Bible study, but going into a Bible study. Like, God was just really leading me. And so started a Bible study. And through that, and I didn't want to start a Bible study because I thought everyone in a Bible study had the Bible memorized. And so I was like, why would I do that? Like, they all have it memorized. I've never even read it. Like, I try to read it. It makes no sense. Like, I just don't understand any of this. But yet I started that Bible study, and it was crazy because we were reading a book called Having a Mary Heart in a Martha World. And I, of course, thought it was about Martha Stewart. And that's how we started. The book is not about Mary and Martha, as far as Martha Stewart, but it's someone similar to that in the Bible. And everyone in that class was brand new to Bible study. And then through that, the opportunity came up again to go to Kenya in January again. And I went to the meeting. I'm like, I'm not going to Kenya, but I'll go to the meeting and I'll find out what it's about. And so I went to the meeting, and I knew when I left the meeting that I was going, and I wasn't sure if my son would go with me. But the long story short is he did. So that's a little bit of the start. And then this picture here is super cool to me for multiple reasons. This is from this was not the first trip that I went on, but the cool part about this photo is in the background. If you look in the back, you see that tree in the way back. There's now a school building there, so you cannot see that anymore. But back behind that tree, if you go out, that's where Mercy's Light family is. I had no idea at the time that this picture was taken that we would even be in Vipingo, which is the city that this is in. And we tried multiple other places to build what we have now built. And that's why I think this picture was taken in 2010 on a trip where my daughter Brooklyn was there with me. And we did a teen outreach. And this little guy was there, or girl, I can't tell, was there. And this picture was taken to memorialize, looking back, memorialize, like, hey, there it was the whole time waiting for us.
It was right in front of you that whole entire time. It's amazing the journey.
Yeah.
So when we look at Kenya and where our girls come from these circumstances that you see in the slide here. For those of you who cannot see the slides or listen to the audio version, we will have the slides available for you as a Google slide download from the show notes. But they come to you alone, afraid, abandoned, because they've been kicked out of their homes due to getting pregnant. So do they just, is it like US where, the girls are just a little bit floozy and that's how they get pregnant? That's not the circumstances that I've heard about. Do you want to tell us a little about that?
I first want to take a step back when I think about the nonprofit journey as a whole, and that idea of how did I even get to knowing like what the purpose was, like before we get to the fact that they're abandoned, alone, and afraid. Like, how did I know that? Like, I'm not from that culture, so how did I know that? And that actually is this book. Really, it was writing this book that brought me clarity on what God was calling me to do. I looked back on all these conversations. I would meet with anyone that would meet with me and talk with me. And I met with government officials. I met with lawyers. I met with psychologists. I met with pastors, a lot of pastors. I met with people running children's homes. I met with women from the village. I met with teenagers, like anyone that would meet with me. As I look back to write this book, at a time where I thought I was never going to go back to Kenya again, I was writing this book. And as I look back at all those conversations, what I didn't notice when I was in the moment was that every single one of those conversations had a comment about how girls that are pregnant and underage have nowhere to go. They're left to the streets. And as I look back on my journey, there was just so many times where God was telling me that. I wasn't seeing it in the process because I was very much, Carrie focused and what my great plans were, and just very focused on what was the purpose as opposed to listening to the purpose he was revealing. And then through that, yes, to go back to answering your question, these are the ways that they come to us. A lot of our girls come to us because of rape, sexual abuse, sex trafficking. Their own fathers maybe get them pregnant, but they kick them out of their homes. They get kicked out of their homes because of financial. I mean, you can see the poverty here. They do not have food. Most of these people eat, if they're lucky, once a day. A lot of times it'll be every other day. There's not extra. There's not, now we can support another baby. And, there's a lack. There's an enormous amount of poverty that we in the US cannot relate to. There are no food stamps. There are no food banks. There are no anything. There's just nothing available for anyone. If it doesn't rain, the food doesn't grow because it's all crops, and you don't eat. And unfortunately, the rain has not been coming. But anyway, yes. So most of our girls come from situations that are rape, sexual abuse, those kind of things. It could be a lot of different things that I won't go into because no one wants to hear about that. But they're not fun. And so that's where a lot of our girls come from.
And this is Carrie's book right here. You can find it on Amazon, From Learning a Missionary Journey to Kenya and Back Again. So our girls come to us from that standpoint. They come alone, afraid, abandoned. But God called you to build this amazing crisis pregnancy maternity home. So what are some of those moments that you look back on? You're like, wow, I knew God was, when you first went to Kenya, you then you had a daycare. Well, actually, let's take a step back. You went from being a lawyer award-winning lawyer,
Yeah.
someone who was just a lawyer, an award-winning lawyer, and then God called you to step away from your lawyer career.
Yeah. That was hard. So when I first went to Kenya, I was a practicing lawyer in family law, in the area of family law for the most part, some other small areas, but mostly family law. And I had walked away from a firm probably about a year before that and started my own practice. My kids, their dad had passed away and I wanted to be closer to home. So I could do that. And so then that's what I was doing. I was doing, I had my own law office and was kind of calling my own shots that way. God was calling me before that, but I wasn't willing to hear, calling me into actually the daycare. A daycare is something I always wanted to do when I was a kid. And even when I had my son, right before I had my son, I tried to set that up so I could go into that and it didn't work out. And I went back to the law. I was a legal secretary at that point, but yeah, it was definitely a journey, that journey of letting go of my status, right? Of that title, of the money, of just what the world says is important. And I felt was important. I had paid a lot of money for that education. I'm still paying a lot of money for that education. My family sacrificed. I sacrificed a lot for that education. I had 2 kids while I was in law school. So I was working, and I worked 2 or 3 jobs depending on the time. Like it wasn't an easy process. And then to say, okay, I'm going to walk away from that to make what I was making was $175 an hour to now make $175 a week for 60 hours. Everyone thought I was nuts. Everyone thought I was crazy. My husband was supportive. I'm sure he thought I was crazy too, but he was at least supportive. He's like, if that's what you want to do, go for it. And so I was like, oh, I'm not so sure if that's what I want to do, but I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. And I don't even know what this means because I'm still new in this relationship with Christ. Like I said, these people, like I just started Bible study like a year ago. Like this was not something that like I had this long, lengthy journey with Christ. Like it was new. It was scary. It was exciting when I chose to look at it that way. And it was a time where I actually really was able to get in the Word more and really able to get to know Him more, and then help nonprofits get started on the Kenyan side as well as the U.S. side. So merging those two things. But yeah, it took a lot of soul searching. It took a lot of prayer. It took a lot of courage, I guess.
Definitely
to trust Him in the finances. Now, I'm not saying God's calling you. Like, I mean, I ran a business. Like, I didn't walk away from law to just do a nonprofit at that point. That did come later. But, you've got to follow the Holy Spirit. Like, don't copy someone else's journey. You've got to take your own journey, and you've got to have coaches and mentors alongside to make sure you're checking in with Him and following Him, not just copycatting someone else's journey, because your journey is not going to be the same.
No, no nonprofit journey is ever the same. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with part 2.
Why become a sponsor at Mercy's Light Family? Sponsors at Mercy's Light Family are ending sex trafficking. They are healing girls physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially to put them back on their feet in just 3 short years for themselves and their babies to be self-sustaining. That's what you get at Mercy's Light Family sponsorship. In addition to that, you get a prayer card with the story of your girl or your baby, so you can pray over them. You get behind the scenes access to be able to see day-to-day life in Kenya and what life is like for the girls at the house and how they're developing. You get that and so much more. Join us in sponsorship today.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We are back for part 2. You have been listening in to the Mercy's Light story of how Carrie went from being a lawyer to being a missionary, and God is calling her in this new season to actually live in Kenya. We'll get to that a little bit later, but let's talk. So you have left your practice, sustainable income that to be consistent for you, to now you're chasing little kids
Two things come to mind as you shared that. Number one was there was a moment in Kenya. I wish I had the picture. In fact, it's probably in the book somewhere, but I'm sitting on the ground in Kenya at a preschool. I'm helping with the baby class. And there's all these kids. I got like 10 kids touching my hair because they don't have a lot of hair, and they definitely don't have blonde hair, and their hair is different. And one on every finger, like 5 in my lap because they're little 3-year-olds, and Kenyans are really, really small generally. And so I'm looking to see if I can find the picture, but it's not popping up right here. And so all this is going on around. And it was in that moment of, wouldn't you like to do this for your career?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a moment, and someone happened to take a picture of it. A friend of mine, Pat Molitor, took a picture of it, and it was like, that's it. Like, this is what I have to do. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. I'm afraid to do it. And I, sought a lot of advice on it. But that was kind of that moment. And then before, I was chasing kids around, like I had to beg for those kids. I had to build that business. I had to build, all the marketing for it. I had to find these people. I had to, lay out, I got to go grab the supplies, there's just a lot that went into that. And it didn't happen overnight. It was a process that I needed to build, just like any business. And so that was that process. And then it was fun. Then I was running around after kids. I actually hired an employee to help. And then when I went to Kenya, she was able to manage things with my mom and some other people as helpers. And so, we were able to grow that into a massive business. Actually, it was probably making the same that I was as a lawyer, as we were able to kind of come together. But I had expenses that would come out of that. But it was really awesome. And the reason it was awesome wasn't because it was a daycare, and it was because I was living out what God was calling me to do.
Yeah.
And then there came a point where He was calling me out of the daycare.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that part of the story. I'm like, okay, we've gotten to the point where we've gone from the lawyer to the daycare teacher. Now God tells you to take another step and close the daycare.
Yeah.
So what brought you to that moment, and what came from that?
I was so scared. Like, my identity was in being a breadwinner. I was always, the one earning more money, like providing for me, providing for my kids, whatever that looked like I was ready. Right. And so to walk away from that, what happened was God, right? Like, God wanted this to happen. And so he created circumstances, or there were circumstances that led to that. But for me, it was Ebola happened in Africa. It was nowhere near Kenya, but with that, it brought some awareness. It brought some struggles. Really, it ended up being more from my employee than my parents. But that wasn't how it was portrayed to me at the time. So there was just a lot that kind of went down there. And then my employee was also moving up north. And so there was just some multiple things. And I went into prayer, and I had a lot of people praying around me. And it was like, okay, what is He calling me to do? What are we looking at here, and where are we going? And it was definitely, it's time to close the daycare and move into full-time nonprofit ministry. And I was scared out of my mind in so many ways. Number one, I love these kids. Most of these kids started with us at 8 weeks, 3 months old. And, now they're 2, they're 4, those kind of ages. And it was like abandoning your own kids. Like, it was so difficult emotionally that way. And I loved it. I loved working with them. And I loved the families, ministering to the families in those little moments in the morning, those little moments in the afternoon, of course, ministering to the kids all day. And it was comfortable. The money was comfortable. Like, so much was comfortable, right? But He was calling us to the next level. And I was scared out of my mind because I was moving into no income now. Now it was dependence on my husband's income only. And like I said, I think earlier or on another episode, we have a blended family. And that hasn't always been easy, especially back in those days. Now it's a lot better, but back in those days, it was really difficult. And so it was super scary in so many ways. And one person missing from this picture, if you're seeing the picture, is Lexi, my stepdaughter. This was a Christmas photo from a handful of years ago. But my stepdaughter Lexi is similar in age and looks actually to Brooklyn. People get them mixed up all the time. They look exactly alike, even though they have totally different parents. Not even one joint parent, but they do look like twins, and they are the same age. So anyway, it was super scary. It's a step you need to take in prayer, if that's where God's leading you. It was scary, but it was worth it. And I knew if I stayed in the daycare, like, it was going to be uncomfortable. maybe, a circumstance would happen. I would be frustrated with the kids, like whatever it would be. It would start with frustration and me being annoyed, but then it could lead to bigger and bigger things. If I'm not following God's will, he's going to give me more powerful nudges to do it. And I didn't want to end up in that circumstance, and I didn't want to end up frustrated. Like, I knew if I wasn't going to follow God's will, like, it wasn't going to end well.
Yeah, because when you're not, you're going to have more of that struggle.
Right.
And I think of some people that have had that struggle and they don't know, God's calling them out of it. And they're asking, God, well, what are you calling me to? And your boldness in being willing to say yes and to close the daycare is just such a testimony of seeing God's faithfulness.
And it was scary. It was scary, but it was worth it.
Okay. So we've got this picture right here. So you've gone from being, you've gone from being a lawyer, you've gone from being a daycare teacher, and now God has got you full time. You know that you're going to do this maternity. At this point, did you know? I mean, at this point, this is the house opening picture, but after you closed the daycare, did you know that you were going to do a maternity home?
Yes. So when I wrote the book in 2012, after I finished writing the book, or during that process, so that would be one thing. If you're not sure what the vision God is calling you to, I'm not saying to write a book, because I did not write this necessarily for the book, but he will bring clarity through writing. So get in there writing. That's what brought the clarity in 2012. And I remember, and it goes to this slide as well, it was the suffering. So I was focused on me and what about my money? What about my kids? What about me? What about this? What about that? Right? What I wasn't focused on is, what about the girls and babies that are dying every day on the street in Kenya? What about the ones that are selling themselves into sex trafficking just so they can have a meal to eat every once in a while? Right? So as we're so focused on ourselves and what we're going to lose out on, we're not focused on the need. Now I see the need bigger, but at that moment, in those moments, I was so focused on me and my lifestyle and my family and my, legitimate needs to certain levels, that I was not seeing the suffering that was going on. And here, we've got a slide here with the needs, 1 in 4 girls in Kilifi County, which is the county we work in. So not all of Kenya, just one county, are pregnant by the age of 18. It's the highest in our county, is one of the highest incidences of rape and sexual abuse. Just really culturally backward norms of selling girls into marriage at 12 years old. Like, I can sexually abuse my daughter because she's my property. And that's the area. Not all of Kenya is like that, so don't get that impression. But the area that I work in, that is the area. The coastal area is like that. It's very kind of backwards and very, that kind of, that's where they're at. Now our girls are going to change that, but that's where they're at. They were at, and that's where they are at right now. And so, it's just looking at that suffering, and we've got to look at, what is he calling us to do? There's a reason he's calling us to that. And it might be a food bank. It might be, something different. Homelessness. I mean, it could be helping neighbors and elderly neighbors. I mean, these are legitimate needs that he has put us on this earth to meet. And it's not okay to be self-focused and was so worried about finances. He will take care of us as we walk into Matthew 6:33 says, as we focus on him and his kingdom, he will take care of the other details. And so anyway, that's where that is. That picture, though, that you shared, that first one, that was the moment that he whispered to me. Someone else got that picture. I don't even know who took that picture, but that was the exact moment where he was whispering to me that idea of write this journey down. It was the house opening of Mercy's Life Family in 2018. So remember, 2012, I knew what? That's how many years later? 6 years later, we're finally opening the house. And we didn't have land even until 2017. So 5 years with nothing. And not only nothing, but going backwards. Like, we would have people, they would go away. We would have land, it wouldn't work out. We would have all these things. Like, it was this constant back and forth. And a lot of it was me. Like, it was, God wasn't ready because my personality wasn't ready. My character wasn't ready. Carrie's got a great plan, and let's walk that out and see what happens and ask God to bless it was this strategy. And that's not his strategy. His strategy is come to me, ask me the plan, walk that plan out in a couple easy steps, and watch me bless it abundantly. That's his real strategy. So don't follow Carrie's rules. And that's why we started Christian Rocketeers. It's because of this moment. And that book that he was calling me to write out that journey was, I thought, for our donors. And so I wrote the book 5 or 6 times for the donors, and it was not coming together. And this is not my first book. I've probably written 6 or 7 books. And I'm like, why is this not coming together? And it was because I was writing it to the wrong audience. And so I'm still in process of writing that book. In fact, yesterday I spent most of the day writing, and that is in process, but it is a part of our program of Christian Rocketeers and helping other people avoid those 5 years. Those 5 years of, is this ever going to happen? Those 5 years of, this isn't going to happen. Those 5 years of the betrayal, the 5 years of the, just all the different pieces and parts, the emotional, the spiritual, just all of it, to avoid the mess, and then get through the messes that you do have. But you're at a higher, it's kind of like kids, right? We're a family. Like my kids now have a higher level that they get to start at, right? Like I started here, my parents started here, and all that. You get to start here so you can skyrocket a lot faster than we did. We've got that going on already with our clients, and it's such an amazing thing to see them launch even farther and faster than we have, and it's just super exciting. So,
and getting them to already see them do things that we didn't, that took us a long time to get to see.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, we're going to take another quick break and come back in a bit with more of the Mercy's Light story. Stay tuned.
I left my legal career to pursue a higher calling. What changes are you willing to make? My name is Carrie Reicherts, and I'm a Rising Star lawyer by the Milwaukee Magazine. And I left my rising legal career to make a difference in the world of girls in Kenya. The women I met forever changed my life. I returned to my job, and I realized it no longer served me. I knew he had something bigger in store for me. I was called to serve others, so I left my law to begin my own business. I founded 2 nonprofits, Operation Give Hope and Infinitely More Life. I also began teaching women who are overwhelmed when trying to start and grow their nonprofit, Ministry to Thrive. My first nonprofit, Operation Give Hope, tackles systematic spiritual, emotional, and financial poverty, afflicting young mothers in Mombasa, Kenya, and helps sex trafficking victims heal. My second nonprofit, Infinitely More Life, operates globally and helps people recognize and reconcile life traumas by working with Christ. I have assisted hundreds in starting their own domestic and international nonprofits. Are you ready to leave behind the fear and doubt holding you back from starting the nonprofit God has called you to? Join the 8-week Christian Rocketeer Nonprofit Startup Certification. Remember, you are not leaving a career or a comfortable life. You are gaining purpose, passion, mission, and you will be changing the world. Join us today.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Christian Rocketeers podcast. And again, I am with my co-host for the day and business partner of Christian Rocketeers, Carrie Reicherts. And we are telling you a little bit of the journey. To hear the rest of the story, we don't have time to put it all into this episode. You can pick up Carrie's book on Amazon, From Lawyer to Missionary. There are 2 versions of that book, part 1 and part 2. And as she said, she is busy writing the next part of that journey. So, all right, Carrie, what exactly do we do at Mercy's Light Family? So we've talked about our girls come to us, abandoned, alone, and afraid, but we don't leave them there. So.
No, we don't.
No, we definitely don't. And we see so much in our girls. So year 1, what do they get?
So we bring them in, we shelter them. They come into Mercy's Light Family. It is a maternity home. And in year 1, it is spiritual and emotional healing. So all of our girls come to us pregnant, that most of them through trauma. And even without that, the poverty is a huge trauma as well. And so we spend that entire year really focusing heavily on Bible studies, psychological counseling, a lot of different ways, devotionals, so many different ways that we pour into them spiritually and emotionally for healing. And of course, they have their baby and they start that process of motherhood as well. Then the next year we move into vocational skills. So a lot of our girls end up in these circumstances because of poverty. One example, and there's many that I could share, but one example is a pad for your period. To be able to go to school, you need, when you have your period, you need a pad. These girls can't afford pads, so some guy will come and give them a pad. And so they're grateful. They take it, they go to school, they're able to continue their education. They're so grateful. And then they do it again. They do it again. Well, then the guy wants payment, and they want payment in sexual favors. And the girls feel they've gotten their part, and they need to do their part. And so they end up in these circumstances. So my point in sharing that story is that economic circumstances lead to these downfalls. And so vocational skills, and getting them vocational skills and business skills, are critical to keeping them out of this circumstance again, and changing the culture, and changing the community. And so vocational skills are tailoring, catering, cooking, cleaning, soap mixing, baking. There's a lot of things that we do. Some just within the day-to-day life of the center, and some that are structured programs. So those are our vocational skills. Now, once you have a dress that you've made, that's awesome. But if you cannot sell that dress, it actually lost you money. So we not only need the vocational skills, we need business skills. We need to know how to market. We need to know where to market. We need to know how to keep our books. We need to know all of those business skills so we can go out and make money, not just be productive, but actually make money and support ourselves and our babies when they leave. That is the goal of our program, is for them to come in. And they depend on us as they come in, but they leave us self-sustaining, and that's in 3 years, in that 3-year program.
And they move out with a business, and they support themselves and their babies, and we see such tremendous life change in our girls. Hey, so they move out with a business, supporting themselves and their babies, and we see such tremendous life change in our girls at Mercy's Light. And Carrie and I could go on and on with the stories and the life change that we have seen through our Girls at Mercy's Light family. So what we would love for you to do is come take a look at what God is doing in Kenya. One of the ways we teach our Christian Rocketeers is to sow a seed into ministry. And we would love for you to partner with us at Mercy's Light. You can join us at mercyslight.org and become a sponsor. Our sponsors receive our girl, so much for being a part of the family. You get a prayer card. Mine is not there.
I got one.
Okay. I know mine's there, and obviously somebody took it. But that is the prayer card that you get to pray over your girl or your baby. And we provide so much for $33 a month for our girls and their babies. They get medical, they get spiritual, they get business skills, they get vocational skills. I'm trying to think what else. Water's a huge thing. Food. Trying to think of all the pieces and parts, but there's so much more to that your $33 a month will bring to the life of a girl and her baby, and change and transform their life. And all you have to do is give up your coffee, give up going to the coffee shop once a week, and you'll be able to change the life of a girl in Kenya. So those of you who are ready, and you've heard Carrie's story and you're ready to start your nonprofit, we want to partner with you. And how we do that, again, is at Christian Rocketeers. And we have some exciting things over there for you to get started at. First part of that is join us in the Facebook group, where, again, Carrie and I teach live on Wednesdays, 1 p.m. Eastern. And also join the family. We have an 8-week Christian Rocketeers course that will rocket your nonprofit from zero to circling around the galaxy. Yeah, that's what it's called. The galaxy. In just 8 weeks, or it could take you 8 months, but we're there partnering with you in prayer, in community, in just everything, reminding you that God is the sun and your source to help you in your nonprofit journey.
Help you avoid the pitfalls. We've been through a lot, and we want you to be able to launch from that point and not have to learn through all of that at the same time. And so our course, our coaching, and our community will help you just elevate so much faster. And the community, it's just key. It's just key. I can't even talk. There's just no words for it. If I would have had this with Mercy's Light family, I mean, we would be so much further along right now. We would be so, and God has the exact right people at the exact right timing. And I'm just so grateful to be able to use that idea of redeeming, those hurts, redeeming that pain, to be able to help someone else share the gospel. And not even just the gospel. The gospel is a huge part of that, but also whatever that is, meet those emotional needs, meet those physical needs, and the spiritual needs as the way God is calling them to. And so check us out over at christianrocketeers.com. Come on over and be part of that family. Would love to see you at mercyslifefamily.org. But wherever it is you donate, the donation is a huge part. God wants you to run your finances, your personal finances, a certain way. He shares that in his word, and he wants you to run your ministry finances that same way. And if Mercy's Light is one way he's leading and guiding you, we would love to have you on board. But wherever it is, make sure you're honoring his way of doing finances, both in your ministry as well as your personal finances.
Definitely. All right, everybody. We will see you again for the next episode of our podcast. Have a great day.